Who is the biggest troll in history? U/JGP devious responded. April Fool's Day 1974, when a man burned 70 rubber tires on a dormant volcano in Alaska. This has to be up there. He waited 3 years to get a helicopter to fly the tires to the top to get a picture-perfect condition. He even got the Coast Guard called out too, and here's the link to the story. U/deleted responded. There was a Prussian, I can't remember his name, who managed to make an officer uniform out of scraps of clothing. He used it to convince a few guards on patrol to follow him into a government building, ordered the arrest of the man in charge, confiscated all the money personally, sent the arrested man to Berlin claiming it was all on order of the king. He then ditched the uniformed, got on a train to Berlin him and managed to beat the guards there. He then sat back and watched the absolute confusion happen. The guy was eventually arrested, but the public turned him into a celebrity, and his actions into a play that was performed all over Germany. He wasn't incarcerated for long, and after his release he lived an easy life from there on. U/Scarlet Captain responded. Technically this isn't a troll since it was serving a purpose, but Admiral Nelson was escaping a French fleet when a man fell overboard. It was Nelson's policy of never leaving anyone behind, so he turned his ship around to go pick him up. The French saw his ship turn back toward them, assumed he had reinforcements coming beyond the horizon, so they turned and ran. U/deleted responded. I was thinking more like the mortician who patented the automatic telephone switch 3 years after finding out his rival's wife worked as a telephone operator and would reroute calls asking for his funeral parlor to her husband's. The guy put a whole worldwide workforce out of work for one person's actions. Edit. Thank you for the upvotes and awards, you guys are awesome. U/Nefastes responded to this comment to say, I'd argue the telephone operator was who put her fellow operators out of work. If she had acted in good faith, the impetus to invent such a technology would not have occurred as quickly. It probably would have eventually, as jobs tend towards automation, whether for the worker's benefit or the employer's, usually the employer, but this act seemed to accelerate the development of auto-switching. U/Victor Blimp Muscle responded. Theodore Hook, the perpetrator of the Berners Street hoax in London in 1810, in which Cook sent thousands of letters summoning all manners of various vendors, and service people and physicians, and dignitaries, and others to all come to one random person's home, literally shutting down a large part of London, as they all descended upon the same address throughout the day, all while Cook and a friend sat watching from a house across the street, presumably laughing their asses off the whole time. U/Mr_Caterpillar responded. In China there was the War of the Three Kingdoms. The Wei, Shu, and Wu. Two of their armies met in battle and the smaller was out of arrows. They were separated by a river. One night, the leader of the smaller army stopped the front of their boats or rafts with straw bales and moved toward the opposing army over the river. They were immediately hailed with arrows. The men ducked behind the straw while the arrows stuck in the straw, undamaged. They then sailed away and yelled, "We thank you for the arrows, we will return them shortly." This may just be a tall tale from Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but it may be true. U/Grub_Flowers responded. Marcel Duchamp, who, among other fun things, submitted a urinal as an art piece to the Society of Independent Artists under a pseudonym, and then was part of the board that was set to approve pieces. He also spread rumors of another piece he was working on so people wouldn't suspect anything. Love that dude. Plus he sparked an interesting discussion in art. Edit. Thank you for the silver. Also would like to mention that as Tequila Mockingbirdie pointed out, the urinal may have actually been submitted by a woman by the name of Baroness Elsa von Freytag-Loringhoven, and Duchamp acted Moresso as a curator. The more you know. U/Anim86753009 responded. Diogenes. He became notorious for his philosophical stunts, such as carrying a lamp during the day, claiming to be looking for an honest man. He criticized Plato, disputed his interpretation of Socrates, and sabotaged his lectures, sometimes distracting listeners by bringing food and eating during the discussions. Diogenes was also noted for having mocked Alexander the Great, both in public and to his face, when he visited Corinth in 336 BC. U/Nag Aram Giatona responded. Basil Zaharov. A Greek arms dealer, he once donated a submarine to the Greek government. He then told the Turks that the Greeks had a submarine and sold them 2 submarines. Lastly, he went to the Russians and told them the Turks had 2 submarines, so he sold them 2 as well. None of the submarines actually worked. Edit. Donated to the Greeks, not sold. U/FIB Agent Norton responded. The guy that sent the first spam email. On May 3, 1978, Gary Thuick sent the first spam email on ARPANET, marketing the DESA System 20 family of Office computers. He succeeded in annoying many people, and the governing authorities even started a crackdown, stating, Nobody should be allowed to send a message with a header that long, no matter what it is about. Feuds didn't know it at the time, but he created a new type of email. U/deleted responded. Orson Welles did a radio play that told people the Martians were invading. The next day he told everyone that his play had freaked out millions of people, when it was a few dozen at most. U/Acerbius replied to this comment to say, ironically, the troll wasn't Welles for running the show, but the papers for lying about its impact. Newspapers were terrified of radio, and were constantly publishing stories about the evils of this satanic device. Local papers basically invented the story of the Martian panic wholesale, and it was an accepted part of history for decades before it was debunked. All you need to do is listen to the original show. The whole thing is an hour long. It starts off with an announcement of a War of the Worlds Halloween special. The first bit is standard 1920s radio fare interrupted every now and again by fake reporters talking about a mysterious object that fell from the sky. By the 10-minute mark or so, he moves completely to the reporters discussing the invasion and the military response. 30 minutes in, there's a commercial break where Welles thanks listeners for tuning in to his show. When the show picks up again, it's an audio play format, where a man narrates himself walking through a devastated city while hiding from Martians. So whatever panic may or may not have happened could not have lasted longer than 15 minutes. U/Apple_Kicks responded. Benjamin Franklin vs. Leeds. Titan's father, Daniel Leeds, was a devout Quaker, who fell out with the local Quaker community when he began publishing the Almanac in 1687. Daniel Leeds turned over publication to his son, Titan, in 1716. The American Almanac predated Franklin's Almanac. Franklin used the first edition of his Almanac to promote the hoax prediction of Leeds's death, October 17, 1733, 3:29 p.m., at the very instant of the conjunction of the Sun and Mercury, and encouraged his readers to buy next year's edition of Poor Richard's Almanac to see if Franklin was right as a publicity stunt and attempt to drive Titan Leeds's American Almanac out of business. 1. When the date of Leeds' supposed passing had come and gone, Franklin published Leeds's obituary anyway. When challenged by the very much alive Leeds, Franklin insisted that Leeds had in fact died, but that he was being impersonated by an inferior publisher. When Leeds actually died in 1738, Franklin publicly commended the impostors for ending their charade. U/just another aviatrix responded. This will be buried, but Sergei Korolev. The dude was getting frustrated with the Soviet government because they weren't interested in funding his space exploration projects. So he got his propaganda group to publish articles about how Russia was getting close to sending something into space. As expected, the US took the bait and started working on their satellite program, and the Soviet government freaked out when they saw the US doing that, so they funded Korolev's projects. He and his group played them good. U/Lehman 9224 responded. Or Kim Tae-yum. This ancient historic Korean conman only shows up in Japanese history books, for he was not an important man in Korean history at the time. After almost a century after Korean unification under Schiller, Japan and Korea had strained relationship due to Schiller Kingdom destroying Japan's ally Baekje. In March of 752 it is written that Kim and his entourage of 300 ppl came over by Kyushu claiming that he is a prince. 3 months later, he has an audience with Empress in Nara claiming Schiller wants to forge a relationship with Japan, and he has brought gifts for the Empress and the rest of court. He compared the Empress status to that of Tang Emperor, and did a lot of lip service to please Japanese government. He claimed that he was a royal servant of Japan, and according to customs Empress had to pay the Koreans their lodgings. But here was the catch. He did not present them with emissary letter containing Schiller's seal. Of course the Japanese get little suspicious, but after assuring them he will show the official seal next year. Kim left Japan on July. Believing Kim's false promises, the Empress brought emissary on February of 753, who were denied access to the palace. Matter of fact, many historians assume that Korean monarch at the time was in early 30s, making almost impossible to have a grown-up son. Enraged at amount of money they have spent on the con man and the fact they were duped, Japanese PPL threw that empress out of her throne and attempted to attack Korea in 732. This probably will be hidden in flood of comments, but I thought it was something interesting to share. LOL. U/mixed_martial_ars responded. During basic training in 1914 a British soldier was a terrible shot on the rifle range. Could not hit a barn door. Eventually his instructor snapped and shouted, "For God's sake, go behind that shed over there and shoot yourself." The soldier at once took his rifle and walked off behind the shed. About 30 seconds later the rest of the men hear a single rifle shot. "Bloody hell, he's done it," said the instructor. Another 30 seconds pass, then the soldier reappears back from behind the shed, and tells the instructor, "I tried to shoot myself, Sarge, but I only went and missed again." U/in too deep booty can't swim responded. Juan Pujol Garcia, a man in WW, Illinois, who decided to be a counterintelligence agent against the Nazis. Britain and US rejected his offer, so he did it on his own. Made up an alias as a pro-Nazi Spaniard, made up a ton of fake agents that the Nazis paid him for, sent Nazis hunting a bunch of bogus convoys and boats for years, and eventually trolled the Nazi regime so hard he was recruited by the Allied intelligence. Il Inamorato responded. J.D. McMahon, who reportedly successfully sold investors on blueprints for a 480-inch tall tower in Wichita Falls, Texas, in 1919. The troll was that the investors all assumed it was a 480-foot tall tower. A building 12 times larger, and invested commensurate with that assumption. The thing is, he never lied to those investors. He never verbally claimed the tower would be nearly 500 feet tall, and the blueprints clearly showed the inch mark on every measurement, not the foot mark asterisk. He just never corrected their misconceptions, and left Texas with the rest of the money after his contractual obligation to build the tower was complete. U/Tannhäuser_Bush responded. Quintus Fabius Maximus, inventor of the Fabian strategy. During the Second Punic War between Rome and Carthage, the Carthaginian general Hannibal had utterly smashed Rome 3 times, at the Trebia River, at Lake Trasimene, and then basically wiped out the entire military and government elite of Rome at the Battle of Cannae. By all standards of the day, Rome was expected to surrender at that point. But the Roman dictator, not a modern dictator, basically an elected emergency leader, Quintus Fabius Maximus, known in English as Fabian, decided fucking make us. Although Hannibal was utterly unchallenged in the field, Fabian basically said, you wanna rule Italy? Let's see you fucking do it. And then instead of engaging Hannibal in a pitched battle which Rome was guaranteed to lose, the Romans sent out little raiding parties to attack all the Italian cities that had switched to Hannibal's side and show them how little Carthaginian power was really worth. This strategy kept Hannibal, definitely one of the greatest battlefield commanders of all time, so tied down in endless shenanigans that the Romans were able to snowball west along the Mediterranean coast, gobbling up Carthaginian territories in Spain and amassing a force to invade the Carthaginian homelands in North Africa, where they were able to overwhelm a recalled Hannibal and win the war. Ever since, this kind of guerrilla, make-us-give-up strategy has been known as the Fabian strategy. Among the greatest trolls of all time. U/deleted responded. Lance Corporal William Charles Scurry. During the evacuation of Gallipoli in World War I, the Ottoman Empire was chasing down the Anzac forces. LCPL Scurry developed a system to fire a rifle using 2 tin cans, one filled with water that would drip water into the other can. He had set up dozens of these rifles, and the system would allow each rifle to fire at different times, giving the appearance of soldiers operating the rifles while they made their escape. U/Elvis Gillette responded. Prince. When he couldn't get out of his contract with Warner Brothers, he changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol to make it difficult for them to promote him. He was referred to with the cumbersome moniker, the artist formerly known as Prince. He released a single with the title Sexy Mother *K, which was assured of almost no airplay. He performed in concert with the word slave written on his face. Upon completion of his contract, he reverted to using the name Prince. U/Von Basovich responded. The fake parking attendant. A well-planned retirement. Outside England's Bristol Zoo there is a parking lot for 150 cars and 8 buses. For 25 years, its parking fees were managed by a very pleasant attendant. The fees for cars, $1.40, for buses, about $7. Then, one day, after 25 solid years of never missing a day of work, he just didn't show up. So the zoo management called the city council and asked it to send them another parking agent. The council did some research and replied that the parking lot was the zoo's own responsibility. The zoo advised the council that the attendant was a city employee. The city council responded that the lot attendant had never been on the city payroll. Meanwhile, sitting in his villa somewhere on the coast of Spain or France or Italy is a man who'd apparently had a ticket machine installed completely on his own and then had simply begun to show up every day, commencing to collect and keep the parking fees, estimated at about $560 per day, for 25 years. Assuming 7 days a week, this amounts to just over $7 million, and no one even knows his name. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Please like and subscribe for more videos like this one.